Thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to be talking about indoor tours. I'm Ian, the founder of VoiceMap, if you haven't come across me before. And to my right is Alicia, our head of content distribution, and to my left, Helene, who is our community manager. And on the screen, you have the gallery of maps at the Vatican Museums, which is part of the story of how we've come to indoor tours. I'll explain a little more on that a bit later. Now, let's look at the agenda. We're going to talk about why indoor tours, and in particular, why now. Then we'll look at what indoor tours look like in the app, so the interface for indoor tours. We'll move on to Alicia doing a demo of indoor tours in Mapmaker, so how to put them together, a sort of very brief overview, and some of the content considerations that are important when you get working on that. And then an extension of the royalty program that we ran for new destinations, for key destinations over the last few months, to focus specifically on indoor tours. And first up, why not indoor tours? So I think why indoor tours is probably quite obvious, but why have we not focused on indoor tours yet? And here you've got sort of indoor versus outdoor, and some of the advantages and disadvantages of each. Outdoor obviously has easy access, right? The majority of the time you're on public roads and streets. Even when you are in a kind of something like a park, you generally have easy access to that location. Indoor, you're typically in a museum or a gallery of some kind, sometimes a religious building, which can be a bit simpler, but you have restricted access, right? So you can't control things in the same way. Outdoor is more technically complex because you have the benefit of GPS. GPS doesn't work indoors. That makes it more simple technically, which is useful because it means that you can put the tours together more easily and faster. But for us as a platform, it didn't give us any sort of point of differentiation. So because it's easy to put together indoor tours, anybody, any platform could start there, and they would have struggled to get the kind of traction that we've been able to get by focusing on outdoor tours. And I think sort of points 3 on both outdoor and indoor continue that idea. You know, you can really offer a differentiated experience at the platform level when you are working on outdoor tours. What I mean by that is a VoiceMap tour, and obviously we have all of these kind of unique voices and wonderful publishers, but a VoiceMap tour should feel like a VoiceMap tour, whether you're doing it in Cape Town or New York or Paris or Tokyo, right? We try and offer an experience that feels familiar across the platform and across destinations. Whereas when you work with an attraction, when you work with a museum, they want to differentiate at their level, right? So they want the tour of their museum to be different in ways that they think is important. And that means you kind of have less you can play with in terms of the user experience. And then an outdoor tour has added value beyond the story just from dynamic things like an interesting route, right? Because you're kind of in this open map terrain where you can take people just about anywhere. You can surprise them by going to places they would never have gone to otherwise. Whereas indoors, it's much more static, and the dynamic things are things like crowds, which are actually, or a particular part of the museum being blocked off, and these things actually reduce value. And so it's made sense for us until this point to focus on outdoor because it's really differentiated VoiceMap as a platform and helped us build this returning user base that is now looking not just for outdoor tours. Right? And so here on the left, you've got our direct sales. So this is purchases on the web and in the apps, and returning users as a percentage of those sales. In 2022, returning users were 23% of direct revenue. In 23, 30%, and in 2024, 36%. So you can see kind of the trajectory is clear that returning users, people who've used VoiceMap before and come back to do additional VoiceMap tours, are an increasing part of the sales we make everywhere. And that means that we have a market that is already looking for indoor tours. We don't have to differentiate. We've already done that with the outdoor tours. And now we can offer indoor tours on top of those. And the most developed market for indoor tours, I think at this point, is Rome. And you can see there that with the publication of indoor tours last year in May, we have now seen indoor tours come to be about half of all downloads. This is despite the fact that I think indoor tours are still only about 1/3 of the tours that we have available in Rome. So they're actually selling more on a per tour basis than outdoor tours. So it makes sense to now try and offer indoor tours in as many places as possible. And then the other compelling thing is that you just have a huge number of visitors to many indoor attractions. The Smithsonian museums, right? We're talking about the whole collection here has nearly 17 million visitors per year. The Sacré-Cœur in Montmartre, in Paris, has 11.5 million visitors per year, and the British Museum has 6.5 million visitors per year. I focused on those three because they're all free attractions. And when I talked about access when you need a ticket to go inside is even more complex than access when looking at a free attraction. So free attractions are kind of the thin end of the wedge here that we see with indoor tours. But we also wanted to think about how, in doing VoiceMap tours indoors, we could differentiate ourselves from a user experience point of view. And we took that very seriously last year when we started to work with Context Travel on their Vatican Museums tour. And I'm not going to get into this in too much detail because Helene is going to demo the interface of the app. But what I think is important is that, especially in the summer, and probably this year more than ever, the Vatican Museums in Rome itself are just super crowded, right? And you get to what is supposed to be the highlight of the whole experience, the Sistine Chapel, right at the end. And I think often people at that point are just saturated, exhausted, and kind of dying for some private space. And what we looked at is, how do we manage people's attention? How do we give them choices so that they can choose how deep they go, or how shallow they stay based on how they're feeling on that day, how tired they are, how much, how long it's been since their last cup of coffee. And so what we've built is a way of allowing people points of choice throughout an indoor tour, while preserving that idea of VoiceMap tour as something that follows a route that is curated because somebody else is guiding you through the space. Because obviously indoor tours, you might say, oh, well, we'll just have a collection of locations and you can kind of pick and choose as you go and do it any way you like. But we've tried to stay with the idea of people following a route. Cool. And so now I'm going to hand over to Helene, who's going to talk about what the interface looks like in the app.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ian.
Stop sharing my screen.
Thank you. So I'm going to show you what the user will see in the app when they are doing the tour, and take you through a small part of the experience. So we're going to use, as Ian mentioned, the Vatican Museum's audio tour. I'll start the tour and then I'll tell you about the features as we go along. So the first thing that you'll notice is there's no map on the screen. Instead, we have an image, and this is the photo where to start the location. So throughout the tour, the listener will have images as well as on-screen and audio directions to guide them. The feel is very similar to an outdoor tour, but there are added options to help manage the listener's attention, especially in a place where there is a lot of information. If you're looking on the screen, you'll also see there are a few other differences. The first one is the carousel here at the top. So the carousel has all the different locations on the tour. Each one is an image, a thumbnail, as well as the number of the location, and they follow each other in order. So this helps the listener to navigate their route. The Vatican Museum's tour is also divided into sections. The name of each section is at the top, as well as the time of the audio of that section. So that means the first section is the Vatican Museum's introduction. It has 13 minutes and 44 seconds of audio, and it includes 3 locations. So what the listener can then do is scroll through here at the top to see the different sections of the tour. So for example, we have the Pinacoteca, which is 71 minutes long, and it has 17 sections, and so on. So sections work best for museums and galleries that are quite big, where listeners don't want to take in all of the information, so they can actually skip some of the rooms or even floors, as these are offered as optional locations. So now if we look back at the screen, if we click on this button here, this takes us to the different sections that you can find on the tour. So you'll see that this tour has 10 sections, and each section has a section card. So the section card gives us the title, which is here, the Vatican Museum's introduction section, the number of locations, as well as a short description. And in blue here, you can see the directions how to get to that section. So if I then scroll further, I can see all of the different sections on this tour. Each card also has a label that we can see here that says whether a section is essential. That means it is part of the core route, or if it is optional, like here, the Etruscan Museum, as well as on that label, it shows the length of the audio. So for a longer tour, especially, listeners can then scroll through and learn a little bit more about the sections before they decide where to go. So what we'll do, we'll just pretend today that we already finished the introduction section, and that we're now at the Pinacoteca. So here you can also see that each section has a carousel at the bottom. The carousel has the different locations in the section. So we have the thumbnail of the location as well as the name. And we'll see that this section has 17 different locations. So we'll start the tour. What happens is that listeners will see the image on their screen, and this image tells them where to go. So this can be a statue, a painting, or like this, in this case, an entranceway. And then when they are at that location, they'll see 2 buttons. The first button says, I'm here, and they can click on that to start the tour. And then the second one says skip location, so that can help them move on to the next. So we can start this tour. I'm gonna have to
I don't think it's coming through. And we're going to get feedback if you leave the mic on. So that's fine. We won't have audio. Okay.
So unfortunately, I can't play you the audio, but the focus in any case here is for me to show you the directions that happen on screen. So let's say we started this location, and then what will happen is at the end of the location, the listener will then get directions, as we usually do, to the next location, as well as an image to guide them. So let's say we finished this location and we're about here at the end of it. So at the last 15 seconds of the location, the directions will pop up on the screen. So this will then tell the listener where to go. From there, at the last 5 seconds of the location, which we'll see now, the image will pop up on the screen for the listeners, so they will then know where the next location is. So this image here is the next location that they have to find. What they'll then do is they will find that location following these directions. And then once they have this image in front of them, they can then click "I'm here," and this will automatically start the next location. So the key thing about this is the sequence continues throughout the whole tour and throughout the whole section. So the listeners just have to click on the image to show them where they are. Unfortunately, it's struggling a little bit. I've lost the connection.
But I think that kind of provided a pretty clear overview.
Yes. So the other thing, I'm just going to stop sharing. And just mention 2 more things that the listeners can also find. The first thing is if they want to skip ahead, they can then skip ahead to a different section. And the other thing is that with a museum that has so much information, for example, we can add additional sections that are not essential. So then what we call these are dig deeper locations, and these will pop up on the screen. So similar to where the directions for the next location pops up. At the end of the location, a dig deeper button will pop up. And then the listener can decide if they want to listen to more information about a certain artwork or a certain statue in a room, or they can skip that location.
And I think Alicia will explain what that looks like in Mapmaker, where you can choose whether you want "I'm here," dig deeper, and it's actually possible to customize and add additional options. We just want to keep it consistent, so we need to have labels that we think will be used across more than one tour. Do you think that your phone disconnected because you were getting WhatsApp previously?
Probably.
Living dangerously.
Well, that's actually all that I wanted to talk through. So unfortunately, I couldn't show you that last bit, but I'll hand over to Alicia. We'll take you through how to create an indoor tour in Mapmaker.
Great. So I will share my screen as well now and talk you through creating a tour on Mapmaker. Process is pretty similar to creating an indoor tour, except you would choose as a walking tour, but you would choose indoor as your transport type. You would then put in a title and the location as you would for any tour, and click create. Unlike with an indoor tour, there isn't a route line as we touched on, but you will still need to choose a dedicated starting point. You can do that by either searching for a location or putting in the longitude and latitudes and then clicking save. You can then add locations in bulk. So if you know that you want 11 different talking points after the introduction, You can just put them in the field at the bottom here and click add. With indoor tours, there isn't the set route line, but you still want the narrative to flow and follow a set sequence. To help with this, some publishers might want to organize the locations first, and this will help structure the tour and organize your thoughts. When adding sections, you can just click over here, and then you will add the title, whether it's essential or not. You can actually add different titles. It doesn't have to just be essential or optional. You could say it's a bonus track or bonus section. You can also change the color for different sections. So if something is optional, you can have all the optional ones in a specific color. You add a short description and then the directions on where to start that section. You then also want to choose a cover. It doesn't have to be for section. The cover doesn't need to be what they will see, but just a nice photo to start with. To then organize the sections, you click on select locations. You can then move multiple locations at once. And when you do move them, they will disappear from this list on the left and be added to the tour on the right.
You can also drag and drop them.
Yeah, I believe so. You can also drag and drop them. Then when you're working on the tour, you want to add the title like you would normally and add a script in. The main difference with these tours is that while there isn't a dedicated word count, because you're not trying to match word counts with talk times, you still don't want to go over 700 words. This is partly because you're going to be battling to keep listeners' attentions. Especially if it's a really crowded museum or a really popular area, you're also fighting to keep their attention with a lot of visual stimulus around them. So try and keep the scripts short and punchy. If it is a really long story, but a really excellent one, and you have to include it, try and manage users' expectations. You want to show them some main attractions, but also show them things that they wouldn't see without your guide, or they would maybe not think to see that. It's not in every tourist list of this is the top 15 attractions or things to see at the Louvre or the National Museum. Show them something that they wouldn't find on their own. With these tours, there's also a lot less editing because we will focus mostly on the directions and making sure that those are correct. So the process of creating the tour tends to be quicker as well. Once you've got your script in, you can also add images. The first image has to be of what they see when they start the tour. So they start this location, this is what they need to be looking at, but subsequent images can be of close-up details, things they would miss otherwise, or different perspectives from this location. The image you add to this location is for this location. The directions you add on this location are how to get to the next location. It is not for this, how to get to this location. So if the next location is a normal part of the essential route, it's part of the core route, it would be quite simple. Make your way inside. When you're past security, press I'm here. If the next location is an optional location, so one that they can skip, where you're going more in depth into a particular topic, perhaps you've touched on a particular art style, but you don't want that to be part of your main narrative, but you'd like to provide some information in case someone's really interested in that particular topic. You can then have deeper locations where you go more in depth and talk about it, but that the tour would still function completely and perfectly well without it. You would then have directions that are a little like this, where if they're going to do the dig deeper location, they need to walk to or go to this particular place, tap dig deeper. But if they're going to stick with the main route, they would then do this instead. So for dig deepers, you tend to have these two different options, and the button, instead of saying I'm here, you would say dig deeper. When you're happy with your script, you would save it to keep working on it, or you would submit it to your editor, just as you would with any tour. And that is pretty much creating a tour in a nutshell. I'm not going to go through all of it, from audio recording to filling in your publisher profile and final touches, because most of you on this call have done a tour book with us before. I will just emphasize that you want to have those main attractions, books showing unexpected sights.
I think also that probably the turnaround on the edits is going to be
it's quicker, because we're not, the content is pretty static. You're looking at one thing and then moving on to the next one, and the next one's a new location. Generally with the directions, if they are compounded and quite complex, that means that you need a new location, even if it's quite a short direct location that is mostly just helping users get from A to B. They're not going to be walking while listening to the tour. Generally, they will be standing still in front of a particular landmark, attraction, painting, statue, whatever it is. They'll be standing still listening to the content. So yeah, just keep them moving. When at the end, once keep them flowing through the museum on a set, or the gallery through a set path, with options to skip particular sections or some locations if it's too crowded or that particular area doesn't interest them. Organizing the content into different levels or into different themes can be also really helpful. That way they can, if a particular theme or area of history doesn't interest them, they could skip that. And it makes it their own adventure while still following a structure that allows them to get the most out of their experience, rather than just being shown the main sites that are overcrowded generally. And yeah, what could be better than having an expert whispering in your ear on your own private tour of a historic site or really well-known gallery?
Okay, then
you're going to talk through the. Oops. Should I?
you can.
I can bring it up.
You can bring it up.
Okay. Oops, no, I'm going to do this.
So just as a continuation of our existing royalty program, but also in a way to encourage more indoor tours, we have a 100% royalty program running for indoor tours. The key factors are that you have to publish an indoor tour by the end of July. They're definitely open to any attraction as long as it is free. Paid attractions tend to cause a little bit of friction, especially when we are selling the tours through resellers. So all it has to be is an indoor tour of a free attraction. After this call, once we've put together the recording, I'll also share the form of where you can that you can fill in to indicate that you want to be part of this royalty program. And on this, we'll also share a list of attractions that we think could be good options.
So we've collected some data around what the world's most popular indoor attractions are, and we've looked at whether or not they have free entrance, but it's far from comprehensive, and it's very different to trying to do the same thing for destinations, which we used for key destinations previously. So we're open to ideas, and as Alina said, we think that free attractions are a bit easier at this point, partly because we won't get distribution through the OTAs. for paid attractions where we have to sell the tour in addition to a ticket. And tickets as part of this business are a nightmare. And anybody who does tours will tell you getting your hands on the right tickets is very difficult and very expensive. And so while we do see ourselves going into ticketing eventually, it's not something we're set up to do at this point. And so there is less friction on free attractions. But we also have, I mean, the Vatican Museums is an example of a ticketed attraction where we have a tour. So it doesn't have to exclusively be that, but the royalty offer is intended for free attractions.
Yes, thank you. So it's this same way as the royalty program that we've been running for outdoor tours. You'll have to publish the tour by the end of July.
And published by the end of October. Oh, sorry, published by the end of July. Sorry, I'm thinking, yeah, okay.
I'll have to publish the tour by the end of July.
Yeah.
And then you'll get 100% royalties on that tour until the end of October. And you'll also get marketing support, including free vital listing and Google things to do ads. So that's perfect timing.
Jan is fast on the draw. Yeah, okay. So let me stop presenting. And Jane is first with her question. Yeah.
You're muted, Jane.
Still muted. We can't hear you.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Does this work for any type of hybrid activity where you're indoors and outdoors? Supposing you're walking through a neighborhood or a district where you want to take people inside to see artwork or any other types of things, and then go back outside. How would it work for that?
I wouldn't suggest it for that. We have manual locations on outdoor tours that can be used in that way.
So it has to be exclusively indoors.
Look, it doesn't have to be indoors at all. Sometimes it might make sense for an outdoors attraction where you have things really close together. And so directions aren't that important and GPS playback isn't that useful. The interface will adapt to that. I think that it's intended mostly for indoor spaces, yeah.
Right.
And that what you have in mind, I think, is better covered by manual locations as part of an outdoor tour with automatic locations. There's somebody on this call, Tom in New York, who has done that quite successfully for a couple of places, but I'm thinking of Bryant Park, where he goes through the park and then through a building as well. That and it uses the outdoor player, so it's a walking tour.
Thank you.
Michelle. Also muted, I think. Michelle. Are you gonna unmute or? Sorry, we can't hear you. We can unmute for you.
Doesn't look like we can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go.
Do you have to ask permission of the museum or gallery to do these tours?
I don't. Brian, I thought you were Michelle Dempsey.
Well, I don't know why I'm Michelle Dempsey. I changed identity today.
Yeah. I don't think you do. No, I mean, you're publishing something that is it's just a digital publication. So to me, it's the same thing as a blog post or an Instagram reel or a guidebook for that matter, right? Obviously, it would be nice to collaborate with them and to get their buy-in, but I don't think you need permission unless you intend to use their logo or to use their trademarks in some way, which can get a little bit thorny. But I don't view it as something that requires permission. We didn't get to do the Vatican Museums, you know.
A lot of museums have their own tours, you see, don't they?
Yeah. And this is part of why when I spoke at the beginning about focusing on outdoor tours in the beginning, what we see now is that we have an audience waiting for tours. And if they can download it because they already have VoiceMap, they're not necessarily even going to find out whether the attraction has its own options. So yeah, I think you don't need permission, and I think that there's a reasonable chance that a good tour will compete with the options that exist at the gallery or museum.
Thank you very much. I've actually done an indoor tour for the Wallace collection, but
Yes, I know. Yeah.
that's using the old method, which I think the new one sounds much easier. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Emma.
You're also muted.
How's this? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I was wondering, if you do an indoor tour for a museum or a gallery, they often have changing expositions.
Yeah.
So I assume an indoor tour would take much more maintenance than an outdoor tour would. What is your stance on that? And also my question, would you know if there are any publishers that actually work together with a museum? So when expositions change, there is a quick response in the indoor tour.
So one example, which is quite a nice example, is we've actually just released a Ukrainian user interface for the app. And that is because we have a tour at the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg. And the Ukrainian First Lady is going there tomorrow and will be doing their VoiceMap tour. And so they were working directly with them as a supplier. They created the tour themselves, working with us, and there is signage on site. So, if you're working with a small museum, a small gallery that would like to have somebody produce the tour for them, then it's possible to do that potentially as yourself, or publishing as the gallery or as the museum, where you would come in as a producer in some way. We've got ideas about how to structure that, but I think we don't need to go into too much detail on that now. So, and then
Maintenance.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah, the maintenance.
I mean, because you don't have to worry about GPS, it's much easier to maintain these tours than it is to maintain an outdoor tour. So if you are going to reroute an outdoor tour and all of your timing is going to change, where you are is going to change, how you're going to approach the rest of the tour is going to change. You have to make you have to think through it quite carefully, and it's a process, and then you have to go out and test the whole thing again, and it would take a while. But if it's an indoor tour and it's something that's been removed, you could just remove that location. It'd be very simple to do. I think, we've got a number of indoor tours already. Many museums, many galleries are fairly static. The ones that are more dynamic, where there are changes, you either have them alert you to it, or you, I guess, need to look. One thing we do is we hear back from users quite regularly, and they will tell us if something's closed. I mean, I think many publishers will have experienced a comment, a review on one of their tours saying that something has changed, and that alerts them to the fact that it needs to be updated. So beyond saying that, you could either work directly with them, and then they would obviously become responsible for making sure that it was known to you that there had been a change, or that you keep an eye on things yourself, or that you wait for somebody who's done the tour to say that something has changed, and then to say that making the changes is quite easy. I'm not sure that I think that's about as much as I can say about that.
Okay.
Yeah? I mean, I don't know. Is there something else that you You don't look satisfied with my answer.
No. I'm just I'm trying to think in a practical sense how that would work out, because you don't want to, I think, rely on negative comments saying that something you describe or include in a route that is no longer there. You want to be ahead of that, and that I think would always require a cooperation with the museum or the gallery. Otherwise, you would have to go in like every 2 or 3 months to see if anything has changed. So that would be something.
You won't get negative feedback for small changes. If obviously an important part of the tour has been closed off completely or is completely different, people are going to be unhappy. But generally, the kinds of feedback we get when people are saying that, you know, a restaurant is closed or that you can't access something on a Sunday or whatever the case may be, they're from people who actually really are very passionate about VoiceMap and are wanting to contribute value to other users. They're not reviewing it as a product that they feel has kind of, you know, shortchanged them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Any other questions? Yes, but also muted.
Elise, you're muted.
I said Elise. Okay.
No. Am I on now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Hi. I have a question it has to do with the description. I have in mind something that would go with my Toulouse tour. It's free. It's part of the monument. That's the central monument. That's the city hall. But it's not very big, but it's very dense with lots of things inside, with lots of painting, lots of sculpture. But my question is that possible to do something where there are only basically 3 or 4 big rooms? Is that too small? Would that be too difficult to do, where it's going from like a statue to a painting to a statue to a painting, so that it's not that you don't move around that much, basically, but it's filled with things. And I was thinking it would be a wonderful thing to do, and it's free. So I just don't know if it's, I mean, it's not like in a museum where you actually have gallery and then gallery and then gallery and then gallery. Here you have basically 3 big rooms and a staircase. That's what you have.
Yeah, so that's not a problem. We do actually have a tour that another publisher created of Beverly Minster, and it's a church. It's, you know, it's not a particularly massive church either. So it's exactly that, where there's a lot to see and a lot to take in, and it's quite close together. So an indoor tour was perfect in that case, because it allowed the user to go through it at their own pace, explore a lot of the hidden details with an expert guide, and just enhance their experience of the site, where they wouldn't otherwise have that information available to them without perhaps extensive research online.
I also don't think the tours need to necessarily have to be long.
Okay.
Right? If a tour was, you know, so the Vatican Museum's tour is 7 hours of content, which is totally, you know, so thank God it has sections, because if it were a long day,
Very overwhelming.
yeah, you know, you adjust this according to how long you think people actually want to spend there as part of their day. I think, you know, I can think of many places I've been to where 20 minutes is enough. And if there was a tour that kind of gave me a really thorough understanding in the shortest time possible, and it was reasonably priced, I would think that was something very useful.
Okay.
Ben. Also muted. Everybody's muted. It's the microphone button sort of down at the bottom left.
Okay, now? Yes. Sorry about that. Yeah, just a related question to that, really, that for something that's a small indoor location where you think it might be a good add-on to a tour that you have that's an outdoor one, but that's more than just a sort of a manual location. So where it would be worth having, you know, whatever it is, 7, 8, 9, 10 locations inside, or sort of points. Could it be kind of sold as an add-on to an existing tour, or something that people can either bundled with it, or that, you know, that it's, because it might be kind of too little. I'm thinking in Granada, the archaeological museum is quite small, but it's probably, yeah, I could imagine there being like 10 things you could show people inside, and we go past it on one of the tours. So it would sort of make sense to sell it together with a walking tour.
I don't see why we can't bundle it. It makes sense to me. I think in a perfect world, we would have these kind of linked up more smoothly than that, so that you could segue from one tour directly into the other, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is a nice space to experiment, right? To see, we, you know, obviously we've been doing the outdoor tours, and particularly the walks, for a long time, and we have a pretty clear sense of the trajectory of that, and what a really great one feels like. Whereas here we're still, you know, there's still a lot more room to explore, and I think there's probably going to be, you know, there's going to maybe be a broader range of what it means to produce an indoor tour.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. Thanks.
Cool, thank you. Anybody else? Doesn't look like it. Well, in that case, I think we can wrap things up. Oh, here we go. Gary, hey.
You can hear me. Just to go back to what Ben just said. So if there's a very small indoor tour, can you, on your phone, can you like switch for 10 minutes to the indoor tour and then come back to where you were, exactly where you were on the outdoor tour? Or is that too complicated for the user?
No, I think that's fine. They just have to end the outdoor tour, and then when they're done with the indoor tour, resume from where they left off.
Right, so it is possible to connect the two fairly seamlessly.
Yeah, I mean, that there's no sort of deliberate UX, you know, link here. But
Right.
I think, so your tours are sorted by your location. So once you exit the one tour, you're going to have the one for wherever you are about to start the indoor tour right in front of you. And so it makes sense. I don't think it would be a very challenging switch for the majority of users.
Because I'm sure that a lot of us have that kind of, like me, you're walking through the neighborhood and I say, in the past, I've said, there's this beautiful church. If you'd like to go in, you can see it.
Yeah.
And that's what I say. And then I say, I'll meet you outside if you come back out. But I could spend 10 minutes with them, say, let's go to see these 3 chapels and then come back out. So it's a separate, an indoor tour that's.
Yeah, I think,
as soon as they come out, they're at GPS, right? They're at the right place for the GPS to go off for the outdoor tour.
Yeah, they can just use resume. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, at the moment, the instructions for walking tours, if someone wants to take a break halfway through the tour to explore museum or to stop for lunch, is you can end the tour here, and when you're ready, resume where you left off. It's exactly that. They would end the tour, start the new one, the indoor tour of the attraction. When they're done, they would resume right where they left off with the walking tour.
Right. So even when in the example, who was giving it in Toulouse, that's that same example. You can go into the city hall and then continue your walk.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I was getting the impression that it was more difficult, but it can be fairly seamless.
It actually makes it easier. The tour I do in Toulouse, the city hall is midway, in fact, in the tour, which
Right,
is
that's
about
what I would have
thought.
I would have thought city hall's on your tour anyway, so you should walk in it. Right.
So
But that means they're buying a separate tour, even if it's in an expensive tour. It can be, €1, €2, whatever dollars, as a short add-on. I think it would make the tour more interesting if they can do it, because many people, for an extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes, would certainly go into this site that I'm saying is beautiful. They'd go in it with me. I mean,
Yes, I understand. Yeah, I think the probably the division here is when should you just have a manual location as an additional part of your existing tour, and when do you have enough to make this a tour that, should somebody not do it as part of the tour that you've already got them on, and come to do that as a standalone thing, would there be enough there? And if the answer is no, probably it's just something that you could add as a location with manual playback to your existing tour.
And just one remark about the indoor tour, which sounds a wonderful addition, but it does mean that the user is going to look at their phone a lot.
Yeah, it does.
I don't know, for the user experience in a museum, to constantly be looking at my phone to know where to go next. Or is it spoken where am I saying, you're going to go the next room and look to the left? What am I?
So the direction, at the end of a script, you would include verbal directions as well as the on-screen written directions, because those directions only come up in the last 15 seconds of, the audio. As it's coming to an end, you'll give the directions verbally, but then if it takes them a couple of seconds to get going because they just want to take a photo of what they're seeing, or they're just looking at it a bit, they want to spend a bit longer looking at it, there's the on-screen directions on where to go next, and a photo to help them identify that this is where they start that next location.
Right.
I think
it's not a criticism, it's just a different, I'm thinking a different user experience, because the idea of the outdoor is you can put your phone away and you don't have to look at it again and you just listen to me. And now we're saying you have to keep looking at your phone at every location. So it's a different user experience.
And it's a different feeling. I think, look, indoor spaces tend to be more kind of informative, educational. They're different. I mean, I've done some of your tours, Gary, and they're these sort of philosophical walks with a lot of feeling, where if you were constantly looking at the screen, it wouldn't have the same effect.
I'll take that as a compliment.
It is. It is intended as well. And whereas indoors, where you're talking about a particular artwork or a bit of architecture, it's not as much of an interruption to look at the screen. I don't think.
Okay.
Tamer.
Hi there, Ian. Thank you so much for this and VoiceMap. It's amazing, and I'm very happy to be one of the users here in Israel. Hi everyone, I'm Tomer from Tel Aviv. Just a quick input here and kind of a question. So I think that the indoor opportunity here is amazing. Unfortunately, here in Tel Aviv, I think that most museums are with an entry fee, so that wouldn't be the most suitable for these kind of sites here in Tel Aviv. But I was thinking about several market areas that we have here in the city. So does this make sense? I was thinking about the Carmel market here that has like food stands that are that have been going on for decades. They're quite permanent. So even though it's out in the open, it doesn't have a rooftop. It's a fairly small space. You don't need a map to navigate there. So kind of an input and a question here, and I'll be happy to hear what you think. Plus, I've started doing the tours in Jerusalem as well. And there I was thinking more about the holy sites there, such as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Wailing Wall, as kind of an additional tour to the one that is outdoors and taking you between the different sites, kind of specific spots that you can make like a kind of indoor tour inside the church, and it complements the tour that is going on outside. So you can choose either one.
Yeah, I think that obviously is something that there's a lot of enthusiasm for indoor tours complementary to walking tours. Well, yeah, thanks for the kind words, Tome. I also just want to say that we don't want to say that we're definitely not going to do paid attractions. We just have less potential on the distribution side because we can't list them with OTAs. We can't provide it. That doesn't mean that the tours won't sell. The tours that, I showed that chart of how indoor tours are now 50% of the sales in Rome. Those are all ticketed attractions. None of those are free attractions. So, well, I think St. Peter's is free, but the queue is, extremely long. So it may as well be ticketed. But the idea of doing a market quite interesting. I think I think the interface will work quite well. What the response will be, how well it will, both in terms of feedback, in terms of sales. It's hard to say. We don't have anything like that right now. We've got food tours. Some of them use GPS. I think we might even have one or two that do use a very simple version of the indoor player, but it's a worthwhile experiment. I just, I couldn't tell you that we have clear case studies of where that has worked really well to date.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. So Ling.
It's Ling Yan. I base in Paris, so there are many opportunities in the city. But I ask more practical question. For the 100% royalty programs, are we eligible to just one or unlimited tour as much as we can do?
Sure, there's no limit. Obviously, we have a limited number of human editors, and
I wonder how many editors are there.
How many are there? 7 at this point. So there's there's a limit on our capacity to get through content submissions, and we obviously have to balance indoor tours with the existing queue of outdoor tours. But no, we haven't thought about limiting this on a per publisher basis.
And do you guys have like data on like what destination or what indoor tours like will be on your list, like that you want the most?
So we do have a list of some attractions that we want the most, and I will be sharing that with you shortly.
Okay.
However, it's also, you're the person who lives in Paris, so what the best opportunities are. And you can also come to us and say, I think these are the 4 or 5 ones that I'm looking at, and we can give you feedback if we have.
Great.
So we have data on what attractions in Paris have the greatest number of TripAdvisor reviews.
There's a lot of competitors too.
To what?
Like guided tours in person, or for application like VoiceMap of apparently not many, but I think people are not very familiar with it now.
Yeah, look, I think Paris is our top destination, and I don't think we had a single indoor tour. So you are, I can promise that indoor tours there will sell because there are people already using the app for walking tours. Yeah, so I think it's actually the case for it in Paris is pretty straightforward. You don't need to rely on additional distribution channels, maybe, because there's just enough happening in the app already, and it's gonna get you're gonna get it in front of people through VoiceMap only.
Okay, great. I look forward to produce more indoor tour in the coming months.
Right. Yeah, we're looking forward to it too. Anything else? Nope. Where are we time-wise?
Just after 5.
Okay, cool. Well, then I think thank you, everybody. You know, Tomer thanked us for the platform, but really we owe the thanks to our publishers who have, to various degrees, taken a leap of faith and put out tours with us, and been very patient in waiting to see results, and have kind of enjoyed the process of seeing growing traction as we've grown. So, you know, that's something we're very grateful for, and thank you for this little bit of extra attention in joining the webinar. We really appreciate it.